Welcome, everybody. We are back for another episode of Black and Gold Weekly. This is episode 16, and we certainly have a lot to talk about today as the trade deadline in the NHL has passed. Bruins making a pretty significant move, to say the least, and a rather underrated move as well, I think, with the addition of defenseman Mike Riley. But lots to talk about there. Also, games still going on. We'll be reviewing the past week, as well as at the end looking ahead to the upcoming week for the Boston Bruins and talking about their current situation in the standings and their playoff chances. So I am joined this week by a very special guest. You probably know him by now. He's been on the show a few times now. It is my friend Danny Jaillet. Awesome to have you, Danny, on the show again. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Great to be here. It seems crazy that we're in the almost towards the end of the season, but yet here we are.
Yeah, I know. There's about a month left of the NHL season now. We're getting really close to playoff time. The trade deadline is just passed, and things are definitely hot in the NHL right now as we head into the postseason or towards the postseason, and teams try and figure out where they're going to finish this year. Before we get going, I do want to thank Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions for their support. This is a show in partnership with Black and Gold Productions and part of the BNG network, and really want to say thank you to all of them. They've been a great group to work with, and you can check out all of the writers' work at blackandgoldhockey.com, an entire podcast network as well. Some awesome shows coming out each and every week, and just a great place to check up on all things Boston Bruins. And I also want to mention the links down in the description of this and every episode. We have 3 links down there. The first one is for Boston Bruins apparel. The second is for NHL apparel, whatever team you want. And the third is for NCAA college apparel. UMass Amherst, national champions now in college hockey. If you want to check out some UMass stuff, it's certainly there. And there's a great different variety of products that are available under all 3 links, whether you want a hat, sweatshirt, t-shirt, sweatpants, accessories, jerseys, all kinds of stuff. A great thing to check out. So if you're in the market for any of that kind of thing, please check out the links in the description. It would be very, very much appreciated. But Danny, let's get into it here, and I think the top story, everybody knows what we're going to be starting with here. Taylor Hall is a Boston Bruin, and I don't know about you, but I was shocked that the price was as low as it was for Hall, especially since a guy like Nick Foligno fetched a first-round pick when Toronto traded for him. But I guess that just goes to show how far Taylor Hall's stock has fallen at this point. And I said, I've been saying for weeks now that I didn't want the Bruins making rental moves. And I still have those feelings that I really didn't think it was worth it for the Bruins to go out and pick up a rental. But with the price this low, you can't say no to that if you're the Boston Bruins.
You can, and I was shocked at the price. Like you said, I had to do a double take when I saw that the price was a 3rd-round pick in Anders Bjork. I'm like, yeah, I'd make that deal 20 times out of 20. I was absolutely shocked that the price for him was that low, especially, yes, he's fallen off, but when you think about where he started his career as the top overall pick, just ahead of Tyler Seguin, and you get a player who hasn't necessarily performed that well over the last couple of years, but there's some talent there. And when you have, the ability to get a guy like that, that's a no-brainer for me. I mean, and he said, and I'd like to read a quote. He said, quote, "I'd love to be a Bruin for a few years. It's obviously been a bad year for me personally, and I need to play well. I need to contribute. Most of all, I want to be a part of a team that wins. I really believe we can do that here. So if the Bruins can re-sign him in the offseason, that deal is going to look even better."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to give up a second-round pick and Anders Bjork, who just straight up was not performing in a Bruins uniform, never lived up to the hype that he was supposed to coming out of college. I mean, that's giving up almost nothing for
Mhm.
Taylor Hall. And they get Curtis Lazar in the deal as well, which I really, really like that move because I love Curtis Lazar. He is an upgrade on the fourth line over pretty much everybody that the
Yeah,
Bruins have been playing there this year. So you upgrade your fourth line, you get a top six player in Taylor Hall, a huge talent, and you really don't give up a whole lot in doing so. That is an absolute win for the Boston Bruins. I still don't think it's going to drastically change things as far as how far the Bruins go, but it's definitely a move that makes the Bruins a better team. And if they're able to re-sign Hall and get him beyond just this year, that makes it all the more better. Because my big thing was not wanting rental players this year. If Taylor Hall turns into not a rental player and they actually get multiple seasons out of him, that's a golden A+ move by the Boston Bruins here. And Lazar's already signed for next year as well. So he's not a rental, and he makes your fourth line better. So I am, as much as I didn't really want Taylor Hall, once I saw the price, it's 100% worth it in my opinion. And again, I'm still skeptical that this is going to make the Bruins a contending team this year all of a sudden. I really think that they're not coming out of the East. I don't think they're going to be the team that comes out of the East in the playoffs and gets to the Final Four, but when you have the opportunity to get a guy like Taylor Hall to, at least improve your team and give yourselves a better shot, when the price is this low, you have to do it. If they were to give up a first round pick, I would not be a fan of this deal. But the fact that they did
I
not have
agree.
to
Yeah.
give up a first or any of their blue chip prospects, like no Studnicka, no Swayman, no Jakob Lauko, no John Beecher, like none of the big prospects had to go either. You just can't say no to this deal. And as much as I was against it before the deadline, with the price being what it was, I think the Bruins, did a really good job here. And getting Lazar was a nice add-in as well.
Yeah, yeah. To me, the value of this deal, like you mentioned, will come in the offseason, especially if he resigns with the organization. You know, you heard the quote, he wants to be here. He wants to be a part of a contending team. I read a couple of reports yesterday where he really always kind of wanted to be here since the start of his career. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, the value of this deal extends more into the offseason because if they can re-sign him in the offseason and he's more than just a rental player, then you gave up absolutely nothing for a couple years of a very good player in Hall. And just to continue on the Hall point, because yes, I know they got other players in the deal. I read a report on 98.5, the Sports Hub, yesterday where it said Buffalo, the Sabres initially wanted one of the two
Mm-hmm.
goaltenders in Vladar or Swayman.
Yep.
So the fact that the Bruins were able to pull off the Hall deal and the Lazard deal, same deal, but two players, without giving up, one of the two goalies was even more spectacular because
Yep.
had they given up one of the goalies, I think that would have been a hit for the Bruins, especially when you consider the ages of Halak and Rask.
Yeah, 100% agree. Again, there were a lot of things that would have made me hate this deal. Giving up either of the young goaltenders would have been one of them. Giving up a first round pick would have been one of them. It's just the thing that makes this such a win for the Bruins, in my opinion, is the fact that they gave up so little. The fact that they only had to give up Bjork in a second makes this a huge win for the Bruins. But I've seen some Bruins fans out there are, I think, overvaluing what Taylor Hall is going to bring to this team and what he's going to be able to do. I still don't think that this is the kind of move that is going to drastically change the course of this season for Boston. Have they gotten better? Yes. Do I look at them as a cup favorite now? No, I still don't. I don't think that this is that kind of move, and it's because Taylor Hall has gone to new teams in the past, and he hasn't been that franchise-changing player, with the exception of his one MVP season in New Jersey, where he had 93 points and put that team on his back. He's never done that throughout his career. That season is the outlier of Taylor Hall's career. Edmonton was never good when he was there. New Jersey was not good with the exception of that one season when he was there. He goes to Arizona last year, and they still lose in the first round of the playoffs to Colorado. And they got spanked by Colorado. It wasn't even close. So, though, I don't think that bringing Taylor Hall in just magically means that the Bruins are going to the finals now or anything like that, the way that some other fans seem to think that this is the move that puts them over the top. I've never felt that way, and I still don't feel that way. And I think there's a lot of people out there who overvalue what Taylor Hall brings. He is not a franchise-changing player. He's a very talented, good player who's, when talent is around him, can be productive, but he's not going to single-handedly take your team the next step. He's only done that once in his career, and that's been the outlier.
Yeah, when you look at this Bruins roster, you obviously have Marchand, Pasternak, and Bergeron.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a big drop-off in terms of the rest of the players on the roster, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Hall kind of helps solidify that middle part of the talent of the roster because you have a lot of youth, and then you have some players who have been underperforming this season. Hall kind of bridges the gap a little bit between the big three, I'll call them, and the rest of the roster, but I don't think he's going to propel the Bruins to the Stanley Cup by any means.
Yeah, no, he has never done that in his career. He's like, the addition of Taylor Hall has not moved the meter with a team that way at any point. But I guess argument against that could be that Taylor Hall's never had the team around him that he has right now in Boston. Like, this is the best team that he's ever played on. Arizona last year was not as good as the Bruins. New Jersey was never as good as the Bruins. Edmonton was never as good as the Bruins. So this is actually the best team that Taylor Hall's ever played on from a roster standpoint. So maybe that helps a little bit. But again, I don't think that's necessarily Taylor Hall being the one that moves the meter. I think that's just the fact that the Bruins were a playoff team before Hall got here. Now they've just added him to it, and we're going to see how far they can go now.
I think, like I said, and I hate to keep referring back to this, if he can get an extension done with Boston and he can get another year with the Bruins, then I think maybe we'll see where his value truly lies in Cassidy's system. I'll refer to him as like a point guard for the Bruins. He's going to get the assists and give the puck to the playmakers, but I don't think he's really going to be a 20-goal scorer or a 50-goal scorer, and that's okay if he can, chip in assists and get some shots. I do think he was a good acquisition, but like we just said, I don't think he's going to move the needle at all for the Stanley Cup, at least not this year.
Yeah, I think
for next year.
Yeah, that's the thing is I'm looking ahead to next year for the Bruins as far as Stanley Cup potential, because they're running out of time here with Bergeron and Marchand and Krejci and Rask, these older guys. Like they're running out. These guys are in their mid-30s now, and they are running out of time. Next year is the year that I think the Bruins really have to go for. I still don't see them winning it this year. I don't even see them coming out of the East this year. I think it's going to be Washington or the Islanders. If they can get Hall signed for next season, I think that would be absolutely massive, because next year is their shot to really go for it. And again, another thing you brought up is that Hall's going to get assists more than goals, and that's another thing. I feel like there are too many people out there that look at Taylor Hall as this goal scorer. Taylor Hall is not a goal scorer.
He is not.
He is a playmaker. He is a playmaking winger who drives play with his speed and passes the puck. He's much more of a setup man than a finisher. And if you look at his finishing stats and his analytics over the past couple years, his finishing numbers are awful. Like, he does not put the puck in the net. He only had 2 goals this year with Buffalo, and I get that that's Buffalo, but come on, 2 goals? And it was the same way even before this year. Like, his goals his goals scored versus goals expected are way, like, he scores way less than he's expected to. His finishing analytics are terrible. He's not a scorer. He's a setup player. Like, he passes the puck really well and he sets plays up. But the people that think that Hall's going to come in and just light up the scoreboard with goals, I mean, have not been paying attention to who Taylor Hall is. This guy, and that's why I'm a little. I was a little wary of him playing on a line with David Krejci because Krejci's the exact same way. Like, they're passers. They pass the puck. They don't really finish. They don't score. Krejci's only got a couple of goals this year. So, Craig Smith playing on that right side, he better get ready to shoot the puck, which he certainly has no problem doing. But, I think that there's this expectation that Taylor Hall's going to come in and be a scorer for the Bruins, and that's just not the case. He's a playmaker. He's a setup man. That's what he's been through most of his career. And he can chip in a goal here and there, but if you're expecting Taylor Hall to be a sniper, you're looking at the wrong guy.
Yeah, he is going to bridge the gap a little bit as far as talent goes for the Bruins, and he's going to be a playmaker, an assist getter. He's not going to be the next Alexander Ovechkin and score 50 goals. But I do think that he could offer value for the Bruins, maybe not in the small sample size that's left of this year, but certainly beyond and into next season and hopefully even longer.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him sign beyond this year. I think that makes this deal even better. It's already great, but it would be even better for Boston. I want to talk a little bit about the other guy that they picked up in that trade as well, Curtis Lazar. He's a guy that came into the league with the Ottawa Senators, kind of was on that line between AHL and NHL, had some years in the NHL. Then he went back to the AHL. He's played in Calgary. Then he ended up with Buffalo. I like him a lot. He's a really solid, I think, fourth line guy, and he's been playing well as of recent, and really making himself valuable in that role of just kind of being a bruising grinder on the fourth line. I think he's going to fit in with the Bruins style really, really well, and I think he's an upgrade over guys like Corrali and Wagner, who Boston's been playing this year, and really haven't had good seasons. I think Lazar's better than those guys, and I love the add-in here of getting him as well if you're Don Sweeney.
Yeah, and I feel like the bruising element, sure, there's a guy like Trent Frederick who's not afraid to throw down the gloves, but, I feel like the bruising element has been missing for the Bruins the past couple seasons, and, if you're Don Sweeney and management, you're expecting to go on a deep playoff run because you have expectations for this team. And if you are going to make a hypothetical deep playoff run, you need a bruiser and a guy who's not afraid to just focus on his role and not try to be too much of a finesse player with the puck because the Bruins already have a lot of those, but somebody who's going to come in and lay the check, get involved in the dirty areas and try to shift the momentum, whether it be a fight or a hit or whatever. And he's that type of player. And, I think it's important to have those kind of gritty players on the fourth line because, a lot of times the fourth line obviously does not have the same skill as, the top lines. So they got to find their own niche, so to speak. And a lot of times the fourth line is filled with gritty players who are, can set the tone with hits and checks, and he can do that. And I think it's important for the Bruins to have a player like that on the roster because they do have some already, but one who is a veteran is definitely important on a young team.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Completely agree with you on that. And before we move on to talking about Mike Riley, who is the other deal that they made here at the deadline that I think is a really underrated deal that I like a lot, I want to make sure that my thoughts on Taylor Hall are very clear because I feel like there's people that aren't exactly understanding what I say, particularly on off the wall hockey. People are not getting what I'm saying about Taylor Hall. This trade is a massive win for the Boston Bruins. It's a massive win because the cost that they gave up was so low for Hall that it was made it a can't miss trade. You could not say no to that. I did not want rental players for the Boston Bruins this season because I don't think they're going to win the Stanley Cup this season. I don't think they're really close to winning the Stanley Cup this season. I still don't think the Boston Bruins are winning the Stanley Cup this season. Yes, this move makes the team better, but I don't think it pushes them up into that top category of Stanley Cup contenders and favorites. Hall is a really talented player, but he's not the kind of guy that single-handedly drastically changes your team. He's shown that everywhere he's gone, with the exception of his MVP season in New Jersey that one year in 2018. Other than that, he hasn't drastically changed things for any team that he has played on, whether it's Edmonton, whether it's the Devils any of the other years, whether it's Arizona last season, Buffalo this season. He doesn't drastically change things. He doesn't single-handedly make your team and move the needle, so to say, and make them significantly better on his own. Taylor Hall's playing on the best team that he's ever played on right now with the Boston Bruins. This is the most talent he's ever had around him on a team. How that affects his game is going to be interesting to see. And I maybe he has more of an impact because the team around him is so much better than what he's used to playing with. We'll have to wait and see on that. If Taylor Hall signs beyond this year and is not just a rental player, that moves me much more in favor of this kind of deal because, again, my big thing was not wanting rentals this season. If Hall's not a rental, this is already a huge win, but it's an even bigger steal for the Bruins if Hall's not a rental. Again, I don't think the Bruins are winning the Stanley Cup, but this was a deal that you could not say no to. It's a good deal for the Boston Bruins. I just don't think it's going to drastically change the outcome of this season for the Boston Bruins. So that's my final everything on Taylor Hall.
And that's fair.
That's where I'm at with this team right now.
Yeah, that's certainly fair. I think it's very clear. And the next person who doubts you on where you stand on Taylor Hall, I'd like to have a word. Because if you listen to this, he's made it completely clear about where he stands. No, but I agree. We'll see if they can get the extension done with Hall in the summer, or whenever. To me, that's when the real value of this trade is going to be assessed. It's already a win, but like John said, if they can get that extension, then that's going to be even bigger and possibly. I would almost be willing to say that it could be one of the best moves of the Don Sweeney era for the Bruins if they're able to get a Hall extension.
Absolutely, no doubt. If they extend Hall beyond this year, this trade becomes one of Sweeney's best moves as a GM of the Boston Bruins, without a doubt, in my opinion. Mike Riley. This is kind of the forgotten guy at the deadline because they made this deal before the Hall trade, and then once the Hall trade was made, that's all everybody was talking about. But they also picked up a left-shot defenseman from the Ottawa Senators, Mike Riley, who has 19 assists this season with Ottawa before coming over to the Bruins. And this, I think, was a really underrated move that I liked a lot. He wasn't the big fish defenseman out there. It was kind of a smaller move, but this is exactly the kind of player that the Bruins needed, especially with the injury issues that they've had with the defense this year. Grzelcyk missing a bunch of time, Carlo missing a bunch of time. They needed a offensive-minded defenseman who can drive play because they've been getting almost no offense from their defensemen this season, with the exception of Charlie McAvoy. So I love this move. They gave up a third-round pick for him, which, again, that's not a big deal, especially being a late third-round pick with the Bruins. Well worth it, in my opinion. Now, he is a rental. He's a UFA at the end of this year. I doubt the Bruins would be bringing him back, but maybe if they really don't like what they've seen from a guy like Lauzon or Zaboral, maybe they do bring Riley back as a depth piece next year. But I feel like this is probably just a rental move. But heading into the playoffs this season, This is exactly what the Bruins needed on the back end, in my opinion. A left shot offensive defenseman who can help out, drive some play a little bit offensively, which they haven't really gotten from their D-men all year.
Yeah, and when you look at his stats this year, he had 19 points this year with Ottawa, which is the most he's had
Mm-hmm.
in his career, I believe.
Yep.
So it's not like this is a player who, is now on the back end of his career and his best years are behind him. He's getting better.
Yep.
And especially when I believe it was the Sunday game I tuned in on your YouTube channel against uh, Washington
Yep.
when basically Boston's AHL defense
Yeah, they
was
were basically
was
playing the
starting.
Providence defense in that
So
game.
yeah, they definitely need depth on defense, and um, Mike Riley, I think, is a good move. Again, if you're the Bruins as an organization, you have to prepare for a playoff run.
Yep.
You're expecting a deep playoff run because you are in the organization and you want to see the guys succeed. And Riley can help you with offense and also help with that veteran presence, especially as the Bruins continue to deal with injuries and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. You never know what else is going to come up, especially, in this season with all the COVID protocols and things. You just never
Yep.
know. So
Yep.
Riley is a good guy to kind of just stabilize the defense. He's not the most flashy name, but he is a player that can get the job done. And to your point, John, I don't know if the Bruins will be bringing him back. I'm not. I probably don't think that they will, but it's a good deal for now, and it gives the Bruins depth at a place where they have desperately needed it lately.
Yeah. Absolutely agree with you on that. I think the Riley deal was a really good pickup and a really underrated move that really didn't get a lot of attention, but was a solid one for the Boston Bruins. So that was the Bruins trade deadline this year. They pick up Mike Riley, left shot defenseman from the Ottawa Senators, and then they make the big splash move, go out and get Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar from the Buffalo Sabres, and they really didn't have to give up a whole lot to do it. They gave up a second in Bjork in the Hall Lazar deal, and they just gave up a third for Mike Riley. So I think overall a really, really good deadline for the Bruins. And again, I don't think it's going to be enough to drastically change the outcome of this season. But with the prices as low as they were deals that you needed to go out and do and make. And if they end up getting guys for beyond this season, if Hall stays beyond this year, it's an even bigger win for Boston. But I thought they had a very strong deadline. We'll see how it ends up. It's going to be a wait-and-see approach. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I am a Bruins fan. I hope I am wrong and that the Bruins do go really deep and maybe take a shot at the Stanley Cup this year. I just don't see that happening with the way that they've played this season. But I guess when you get to the playoffs, anything can happen.
And when you say you don't see something happening, the opposite usually happens. So keep
Yeah,
saying that it doesn't
you're
happen,
not wrong there.
and hopefully the Bruins will be able to beat the Capitals, Islanders, and then face the Avalanche of the Stanley Cup. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. But that's going to do it for our trade deadline talk here. I want to take a look at the past week for Boston as they've been playing all the way through. They've got a few games to review here. Going back to last Thursday, where they picked up a 4-2 win over the Washington Capitals. That was a solid win for the Bruins against a tough opponent, and a win that they certainly needed. And
Yeah,
I thought that was overall just a really strong performance and a good game for the Bruins.
yeah, and it's kind of weird when you consider the youth of the Bruins roster and some of the holes that they have.
Hmm.
That this is the first year in quite a while that I can remember them having as much success against Washington as they have been able to have, because they've really struggled against the Capitals before, and I believe they beat
Yep.
them once in January, correct? Or twice in January.
Yeah, we've beaten the Capitals, I think, 3 times this season now, if I'm not mistaken.
And
Um,
there was a point in time where we hadn't beaten the Capitals for like 2 seasons, and
Yeah.
somehow, you know, Braden Holtby was always the glue that
It
kind of held the Capitals together, and we could never, ever, ever score against Holtby. It was like trying to shoot at a brick wall. And now that Holtby's gone, maybe that was the spark that the Bruins needed, the little extra help in order to get the job done. But that was a very solid win on Thursday for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We have 3 wins against the Washington Capitals this season, and you are right. That is shocking because up over the last number of years, really from I think it was from 2014 on, there was a stretch there where the Bruins lost 14 out of 15 or 14 out of 16 games
Yeah.
against Washington for a many-year stretch where we just could not beat the Capitals. Um, the fact that they have 3 wins in a single season against Washington, I think, proves that Holtby was kind of the bad juju there. We could not beat Braden Holtby. But now that he's out of Washington, we found some success against the Capitals here this season, at least a decent amount. And that was a solid win on Thursday, and one that the Bruins needed because they are in a very, very tight playoff race, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But they need every win that they can get and every point that they can get this season. So that was a big win on Thursday, and then we're going to get to we have to talk about some not so good. Back-to-back games on Saturday and Sunday. They had Philly on Saturday, Washington on Sunday. We'll start with the Philadelphia game. This was a game that I really thought the Bruins needed to win, and they take a 3-2 loss to the Flyers in a game against a team that they should beat, and a team in Philadelphia who's pretty much completely given up on this season. They come out and they drop the game 3-2 in Philadelphia or against Philadelphia, and they don't even get a point out of it. It's a regulation loss, and this one was really frustrating for me.
Yeah, it was one of those games. You've heard of the phrase "playing down to your competition." I thought the Bruins did that on Saturday.
Hmm.
To me, when I was looking at the schedule, I knew that Thursday would be difficult. Saturday was the game that I thought they absolutely needed to win
Yep,
because I knew Sunday was almost a loss.
a
Just playing back
guaranteed
to back
loss.
against
Yep.
against Washington, that was going to be tough. So I really thought that they needed to win on Saturday, but you know they just didn't look ready and they just couldn't get the job done. And that was the most frustrating part because, like you said, Philadelphia looks like they've given up. So, I'm hoping that this trend kind of stops, that they win the winnable games. We talk about the 4 games, not to get too far ahead here, but we talk about the 5 games or whatever we have against the Buffalo Sabres over the next week or so.
Hmm.
I'm hoping they don't play like they did last Saturday in the next week against Buffalo because those are definitely winnable games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an issue with this Bruins team where, we've seen it against New Jersey a lot this year, where
Yep.
there are certain teams that they should be beating and beating handily, and they're just not. And Philadelphia at this point is one of those teams that the Bruins should be beating handily. Philly is not going to the playoffs this year. This team is checked out. And I agree with you, that Saturday game needed to be a win, in my opinion, because the Sunday game was a guaranteed loss before it even begun for multiple different reasons. Not just that it was against the Capitals, but because it was the second game of a back-to-back. They had travel in between. Washington did not play on Saturday, so they were rested. The Bruins were not. That was one of those games going into it that you just fully expected them to lose, and I fully expected the Bruins to lose the game on Sunday. And not they didn't just lose the game on Sunday. They got absolutely spanked. But this is one that I almost just kind of laughed off. I was streaming this game and I didn't even get mad or anything. I just laughed this one off because I thought that they were going to lose to begin with. Then they end up missing almost their entire defense. I mean, Grizzlick's out, McAvoy's out, Carlo's out,
Yep.
Miller's out. They're playing basically the Providence Bruins defense in this game. And they get absolutely destroyed 8-1 by the Capitals. That makes the first win on Thursday against Washington all the more important because this Sunday game was just one that you kind of just crumble up and throw in the trash.
Yeah, and that game was interesting to me because I shut it off after it was 3-0. But the first 2 goals
Hmm.
went right over Vladar's
Short
right
side.
shoulder, I believe it was.
They were
And
both short side goals against Vladar.
and if I'm future teams watching film of the Bruins, I take note of that.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, he's probably not going to be playing as much with Tuukka Rask back in the picture,
Yeah.
and Halak probably coming back soon off the COVID protocol list. But these goalies probably are the Bruins' future, and this is something that Vladar needs to kind of polish if he wants to show that he can be a consistent NHL goaltender.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're very young. They're very talented goalies, but they certainly still have things to work on. And that game, I think, against Washington on Sunday definitely pointed some things out to me that Vladar still needs to work on. Now, obviously, the team in front of him
Yeah.
I mean, they hung him out to dry. I'm certainly not
Yes.
blaming Vladar for this loss. I mean, he was
Yes. No, not
completely
at
hung
all.
out to dry. But the short side goals in particular were ones that were kind of alarming to me, because if you're going to be a really good NHL goaltender, you cannot be getting beat short side on a regular basis. And that's something, I don't know if it's just angling or what it is. I've never played goalie. I'm not a goaltending coach. I don't really know that much about the specifics of goaltending, but I do know that that is something Vladar is going to need to fix. You cannot be getting beat short side on a regular basis, and whatever the issue is there, that's something to work on with the goalie coaches for sure.
And look, as we're seeing with the rest of the roster or most of the roster, Vladar is kind of developing on the fly
Yep.
here, and so he has time to fix this, no doubt. And he did have a bad game because let's face it, there was no defense in front of him on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday. But this is something that if I'm the goalie coach, like you said, I definitely work with him and correct him on it, because the shot that he stopped, he looked great. I mean, he's had lots of stretches where he's looked really good, and if
Mm-hmm.
he can just clean up, kind of the areas that are giving him some trouble, he can be a solid pair with Swayman for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah, I completely agree 100%. So the Buffalo game, or not, no, we're getting to the Buffalo game. The Sunday Washington game's just kind of a crumble up and throw away type game. Like, you just toss that one in the trash. And then we get to Buffalo after the trade deadline. First game post trade deadline. You've got Hall, Lazar, and Riley in the lineup. New guys coming in. Bruins go to a shootout. I will say that Sabres did. I mean, they played fairly well. They put up a fight for sure. But to me, this was a game I was kind of hoping that Boston would take care of business rather easily and win by at least a few goals. And it ends up going to the shootout, and they just squeak out the 2 points over the Sabres. And as well as there were certainly some good things, especially among the newcomers to the Bruins. I thought they all had fairly decent games. Still, I wasn't overly impressed with the fact that this game had to go all the way to a shootout for the Bruins to win against the worst team in the league.
I wasn't either, and it seems like we just talked about like Buffalo, New Jersey, those type of teams always seem to give the Bruins trouble,
Yep.
especially this year with New Jersey. And at this point, a win is a win for me. I just want them to get through with the regular season before, and then have the playoffs. Before the playoffs, then I would love to see that. See them turn it on more. I was not impressed with the effort against Buffalo, but a win is a win, and I hate to be that simplistic about it because it was not a very, you know, good played game on the part of the Bruins. But at this point, after getting absolutely destroyed by Washington and losing to Philadelphia, I was happy with the 2 points
Yeah.
against Buffalo because, as we're seeing down the stretch here, every single point matters.
Well, you're 100% right. A win is a win, no matter how it comes. And even though we would probably like to see the Bruins beating Buffalo by more than a goal,
Yep.
the 2 points are the 2 points, and that's really what matters. And that's what matters because of the playoff race that the Boston Bruins are in right now. They are currently holding the fourth spot in the East Division with 50 points, the final playoff spot in the East Division, and the New York Rangers are hot on their tail, just 4 points behind with 46 points and playing fairly well recently. The Bruins do have 2 games in hand, which will certainly come up big down the stretch here, but the Bruins are certainly no lock yet for the postseason. The Rangers still could come and steal that spot. They are within striking distance, so every single point matters at this point in the season, and I think it's going to be a dogfight down to the end for the Bruins here.
And it's kind of weird because I can remember on the last time that I was on the show,
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, we got to talk about, the Bruins haven't made the playoffs yet. We got to talk about if the Bruins make the playoffs. And you said something to the effect of, oh, they're definitely going to make the playoffs. They were, I think, second in the conference at the time. And it's just crazy to see, like, how much things have kind of
Changed.
and
Yep.
sorted themselves out. Like
Mm-hmm.
that dip that we were afraid of in terms of youth and kind of fatigue and injuries and all that, it's starting to hit now, and it's changed kind of the landscape of the league drastically, and it's made for some fun playoff races coming down the stretch here.
Yeah, I think the last time that you were on the show, Boston was one of the best teams in the league, and they were right up
Yeah.
there near the top of the division. And
Yeah.
we all thought that Boston was going to easily cruise through the regular season, and the test was going to come playoff time, and now the test is just getting into the playoffs for them. And that shows, just everything that's happened this year with all the injuries, with the young players going through their ups and downs. The Bruins as a whole just being a very inconsistent and roller coaster type team this year. And it's funny because at the beginning of the year, I thought the Bruins would have gotten off to a bad start because they're so young and they're, just trying to figure everything out, and that they would get better as the season went along. And in fact, they got off to a really good start, and then everything kind of hit, the young players, the fatigue, and then the injury bug hit, and it's kind of gotten worse. And it's not been the year that I was expecting for the Bruins, and now they find themselves in a very tight race trying to get into the postseason here.
I feel like they peaked too early, to be honest with you, and I was kind of
Mm-hmm.
worried about that. I was certainly excited that they were getting all these wins and things, but I knew that they might have peaked too early. I
Yep.
had a feeling that the youth and the injuries and all that were going to catch up to them. I just didn't know when, and unfortunately, it's kind of happening right now. And it's kind of weird because you and I and probably plenty of other Bruins fans out there, we thought at the end of January and even February and into some of March that the Bruins were one of the best teams in the league, which they were. They were going to make the playoffs easily. And now we're kind of seeing what we thought was going to happen at the beginning of the year
Mm-hmm.
with the youth and the injuries kind of slowing things down. So like you said, it kind of almost happened in sort of a reverse type of
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. So, with regards to the Bruins in the playoffs, I have a few questions I want to ask you here and just get your opinion on. The first one is very, very simple. Do the Bruins make the playoffs this season?
Yes, because of this stretch that they have coming up against Buffalo with
Mm-hmm.
the games against Buffalo, and that's the only way that they will make the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I do still see the Bruins getting in. I think the Rangers are just going to come up a little bit short. They definitely have a chance to push the Bruins and give them a fight, but Boston has 5 remaining games this year against the Buffalo Sabres. They need to take care of business in those games. They've got another couple games against New Jersey. They've got a big series against the Pittsburgh Penguins coming up. The Bruins control their destiny. They have a 4-point
Sure.
lead for the final playoff spot. They have 2 games in hand over the Rangers. They control their season here, and they need to make sure that they win the games that they need to win. And if they do that, they will be a playoff team this year. And I do think that the Bruins get into the playoffs. So I agree with you on that. So Bruins get in. Let's say that they make it. Which team would you want to play out of the teams that have a chance to be a playoff team and potential matchups that could happen? Who would you want to play if you're the Boston Bruins in the first round?
Now, it's going to take a lot for this to happen, as we
Yeah.
discussed off the air, but Pittsburgh, I was high on Pittsburgh at the beginning. You weren't. I just like to throw that out there because
Yeah.
I like my victories. Sorry. Nothing against you. I like my victories, and I like to let everybody know. But no, I would want them to face Pittsburgh just simply because none of the other matchups look looks sort of favorable to the Bruins.
Yeah.
Besides Pittsburgh, and even Pittsburgh is not easy. The Bruins are going to potentially face some extremely tough opponents, and I think Pittsburgh is probably the easiest one out of the grouping that the Bruins could face
Yeah.
down the road here.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's my answer as well. Now, it would take a lot for that to happen. So that can happen one of two ways. Either Pittsburgh can go on past the Capitals and the Islanders and win the division, and it would be the 1 seed versus 4 seed matchup with the Bruins in fourth and the Penguins in first. Or the Capitals or the Islanders would have to drop all the way down to fourth. The Bruins and Penguins would move up to second and third, and it would be the 2-3 matchup. It is very unlikely that the Bruins actually get to play the Penguins in the first round. But of the playoff teams in the East, the Penguins are the team that I would most want to face. There's a few reasons for that. One, goaltending. I do not trust the Pittsburgh Penguins goaltending.
Agreed.
Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith, they've shown flashes of playing really, really well, but then they've gotten absolutely lit up at other points this season. I do not trust the goaltending. The Bruins have the better goaltending than the Pittsburgh Penguins. That would be advantage Boston in the playoffs. The other thing is the Penguins' defense. I look at that defense roster, and I do not trust that to hold up in the playoffs either. I think the Bruins are a better defensive team overall than the Penguins, and they give up less goals in general than the Penguins. And in the playoffs, usually defense wins, and I think that would be advantage Boston as well. So those are two big reasons. I just think Pittsburgh is the most beatable team as well. Like they're out of the teams, the Islanders, the Capitals, and the Penguins that the Bruins could face, I think Pittsburgh is the most beatable team. So I would like to see Pittsburgh in the first round. Also, the Penguins have lost in the first round of the playoffs each of their past 2 years. Or actually, last year, technically, they lost in the qualifier to Montreal. So they didn't even technically get to the first round because
That's right. Yeah.
they lost in the qualifying round. So Pittsburgh, they got swept by the Islanders 2 years ago. They lost to Montreal in the qualifiers last year. Like Pittsburgh hasn't had recent playoff success. So, for many, many reasons, I think the Bruins would match up best against the Penguins, and that would be the easiest. Not that it would be easy by any stretch. Nothing's easy in the playoffs, but that would be the best matchup for the Bruins to potentially win a series in the postseason this year.
I agree, and when you look at the rest of the field, the rest of the field has had a lot of success against the Bruins this year, especially recently. And the Penguins, I believe they have beaten the Bruins once this season. I'm trying to remember here, but like you said, the defense is something that I have been worried about for Pittsburgh, and the goaltending has not been stellar. So, out of all the playoff opponents, I definitely would want to see Pittsburgh.
Yeah, let's see. Boston and Pittsburgh, I believe, have played 6 times this season, and the Bruins have won 4 of those 6 games. Pittsburgh's won 2.
All right, so yeah, the Bruins have had success against Pittsburgh this year. I don't know why I only thought it was once, but I'm so used to the prime Crosby and Malkin days that the Pittsburgh Penguins automatically shine in my head from those days. But
yeah,
I would definitely prefer Pittsburgh, although it is definitely a long shot to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So now we're going to switch things up, and I want to know who is the one opponent, and to me this is a hard pick between the top 2 teams, but who is the team that you most just do not want to play in the first round this year?
Neither. No, probably the Islanders, because the Bruins have had success against the Capitals this year.
Yep.
The Islanders just always seem to have had the Bruins' number this year, and it's been so frustrating to watch them play New York. At least with Washington, they can go back on film and say, okay, this is what we did really well, and this is what led to wins, and they have something to at least go off of, where the Islanders have given the Bruins, a tough time every step of the way. So I would rather them face Washington, although I would not expect the Bruins to win the series. But I think they would have a better shot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Islanders are the one team that I do not want the Bruins to have to face in the playoffs. There's certainly a chance that that is going to be their first round matchup. New York, if they win the division and the Bruins finish fourth, that would be the 1-4 matchup, and we would have to play the Islanders. But I mean, there's so many things, like you said. Like, the Bruins have beaten the Capitals this year, and while I don't think the Bruins would beat the Caps in a playoff series, I do think they'd have a much better shot against Washington than against the New York Islanders. Washington's got two very young goaltenders, Ilya Samsonov and Vitek Vanacek, so there's a little bit of a question mark there. Boston's had success against the Capitals this season. They've won some games, which they haven't against the Islanders, at least not yet. Capitals haven't had a lot of recent playoff success since their Stanley Cup in 2018. Each of the past two playoffs, they've been out in the first round. They lost to the Islanders last season, and they lost to the Hurricanes the year before that. So there's not a lot of recent playoff success there for Washington, so that would, be something that moves it a little bit in the Bruins' favor. Again, I don't think the Bruins are going to be either the Capitals or the Islanders in a playoff series, but I think they would have a much better chance against Washington than against New York. New York's got significantly better goaltending than the Capitals do. New York's system and just style of play is perfect for the playoffs. They're so well coached, and they were in the Eastern Conference Finals last season. So I think the Islanders would be pretty much a guaranteed loss for Boston in the postseason, and I do not want to have to play them.
And with the Capitals, you're also looking at an older Washington group,
Yep.
which I think may help the Bruins slightly, a little bit, just because they're an older team too. So the pace won't have to be as fast because we've seen the Bruins, kind of fail miserably against faster teams like Tampa Bay, for instance. And while New York is not really comparable to Tampa Bay in terms of speed, that youth kind of trips up the Bruins sometimes in the playoffs. Even when you go back to the Stanley Cup against St. Louis a couple of years ago, they had St. Louis had a couple of younger players that really gave the Bruins a hard time defensively. And I would not want the Bruins to have to face a younger team, so to speak. I would much rather them face a veteran team like Washington because I think their window is closing as well just because of the age of their veterans. So I think that may help the Bruins in terms of matchups.
100% agree on that. So Boston's playoff situation right now, they are in the playoffs by 4 points in fourth place over the New York Rangers, and they have 2 games in hand. Danny and I both think that they will make the playoffs this year. We both would love to see them play Pittsburgh. We think that's the most favorable potential matchup. The team that we do not want them to have to play is the New York Islanders because, they haven't had a whole lot of success against the Islanders this season, and there are other reasons as well, for sure, including the goaltending and the structure of the Islanders' style of play that would really give the Bruins some issues. So, want to look ahead now to the upcoming week for Boston. And we were just talking about the Islanders as a team that we do not want the Bruins to have to play in the playoffs. The Bruins have a back-to-back set starting tonight. We're recording this on Thursday, so by the time this comes out, we'll know how the first game went. But they have a back-to-back set Thursday, Friday against the New York Islanders at home. They've played a lot on Long Island this year, but Boston finally gets a chance to see the Islanders at home. And just kind of, what are your thoughts on this couple of games against New York here? I think the Bruins need to win at least one of these games.
Yeah, the Bruins definitely need to split, or else they could be in some major trouble. With Tuukka Rask coming back tonight, that could give the Bruins a huge boost, especially in terms of goaltending. The younger goaltenders have been good, but it's not their time yet. So having Rask back in there, as much as I said on the show, I'm not a huge fan. I think it will help the Bruins right now in terms of just, having that veteran presence in net to compete. The Bruins need to split the series with the Islanders, and then they have, coming up next? Buffalo?
Washington on Sunday again, an afternoon game against the Washington Capitals.
Yikes. So, yeah, they definitely need to split against the Islanders because I do not see the Washington game going well just because the Bruins always seem to have a little bit of trouble with Sunday afternoon games anyway. So
The
this
good
weekend, they need to split with the Islanders. I'm going to say they're probably going to lose against the Capitals. But once the weekend ends, then it's what? Then
Buffalo. 3 straight against the Buffalo Sabres. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, all against the Sabres.
they need to sweep that entire series, preferably in
Yep.
regulation.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
I can't take too many more of these shootout games. But um, my big thing for this week, as much as I would love to see them win, I'm counting Washington as a loss just because of the prior history this season and even the last Sunday when they were completely dismantled. Different circumstances, but anyway, um, split with the Islanders, lose Washington, and then hopefully sweep Buffalo.
Yeah. Now the good thing is Washington hasn't been great in afternoon games this season either. So they're kind of in the same boat as the Bruins, where they haven't been great in the afternoon starts. So, that Sunday game's going to be interesting for sure. I completely agree. They need to split the Islanders 2 games. They've got to win at least one of those just to beat the Islanders and prove that you can win against that team. They also really need the 2 points because, like we said, the Rangers are right on their heels. Washington, that's going to be an interesting one. I don't expect the Bruins to win that game, but I do think they could. But again, both of those teams have not done all that well in afternoon games this year. So I'll be interested to see how that Sunday game turns out. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, all week against the Buffalo Sabres. The Bruins need to win all 3 of those games. They have got to get 6 out of 6 possible points there. And anything less than that is going to be a massive disappointment and a blown opportunity to kind of help secure a playoff spot. And I agree with you on that. They cannot play down to Buffalo. They cannot give up a game to a last place team like that. They are in a tough playoff race. They need to win all 3 games against the Sabres.
Yeah, and like we've said earlier in the show, they seem to play down to lesser competition, and they cannot do that next week. This week was a gift as far as the schedule goes, and they need to take advantage of it because they're not going to get too many more easy, I shouldn't say easy, but less challenging opportunities than next week because after this, the playoff races, they're entering the final stretch, and we begin to see who's facing who in the playoffs, and it's not going to be easy. So they need to get the job done against Buffalo. And honestly, if they lose one of the Buffalo games, then I'm I'm willing to say that puts a huge dent in their playoff chances.
Yeah, I definitely think they need to get the job done against the Sabres for sure. Big week coming up for the Bruins. Couple games against the Islanders. Weekend game to finish up the homestand against Washington. And then 3 straight in Buffalo that the Bruins really need to make sure that they take care of business against the Sabres. That's going to be a big set right there, in my opinion. And Boston can kind of try and distance themselves and move up the standings and secure a playoff spot. Or if they start dropping games to the Sabres, they're going to be in big trouble with the Rangers right on their heels. So this is a huge, huge week coming up for Boston. And that now is going to bring us to our final segment of the show. As we always end it, Bruins Bet of the Week. Shout out to BetOnline AG. It's who I use to place my bets, and they are the sponsor of the Black and Gold Hockey Podcast and our website, blackandgoldhockey.com. So a big shout out to them for their support of Black and Gold Productions here. But per usual, this can be any kind of bet, money line, puck line, over, under. I was wrong again last week because I had puck line Bruins winning by at least 2 against the Sabres, and as we talked about earlier, it went to the shootout and was only a 1-goal game. So I think I've only gotten like 2 of these right all year. It really is annoying. But my Bruins bet of the week this week is for the game again against the Buffalo Sabres on Tuesday, the first game coming up against Buffalo this coming week. And I have under 5.5 total goals in the game. Bruins have played a lot of unders this year. They just played an under against the Sabres with that 3-2 shootout game. I think it's going to be another low-scoring affair, especially with the Bruins getting Tuukka Rask back. I'm saying under 5.5 on Tuesday against Buffalo. That's my bet of the week for Boston. Danny, do you have anything to add?
I'm going to take that bet with you. I hate to
Mm-hmm.
piggyback off it, but when I was looking at bets that were favorable to the Bruins
Mm-hmm.
for this next week, there weren't a ton, given that there is Washington mixed in there as well.
Yep.
So, and with the 3 games against Buffalo, I'd be willing to take the same bet as you, 5.5, and I think that's a very solid bet, especially given how these teams have kind of clawed tooth and nail when they've played each other.
Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of low-scoring, close games against the Bruins with the Bruins and the Sabres, so I would expect more of the same coming up in this one. So that is going to do it, everybody, for episode 16 of Black and Gold Weekly. Really, really want to thank Danny for coming on and being a guest on the show again, man. It was great to have you, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to listen to this, and I hope to be on again soon. Hopefully
Yeah.
for playoff talk.
Absolutely, man. We'll definitely be getting you on again. You've become one of the more recurring guests on here. It's great to have you every time, man, for sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And again, I want to give a shout out to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show is in partnership with Black and Gold Productions and would not be happening without them. So they've been awesome to work with. Definitely check out all of the writers who put out awesome Bruins content each and every day on blackandgoldhockey.com, as well as the podcast network, a bunch of great shows covering all things Boston Bruins available on the website as well. And one last shout out to point out of the links down in the description: NHL apparel, Boston Bruins apparel, and NCAA college apparel. 3 links down in the description. Would really, really appreciate if you could click those if you're in the market for any of those things. We got all different kinds of products, a great array to choose from. And that is going to do it for episode 16. So I want to say thank you to everybody for watching and listening. We really, really appreciate it. And I'll be back next week with episode 17, and we'll have a whole other week of Bruins hockey to talk about. But until then, have a great week, everyone. Go Bruins, and talk to you guys soon. Thank you.